Hello, my name's Maureen Dunn. Just really briefly, I've been involved in the neurodiversity field for over 25 years. I'm both trained as a professional, did my doctorate at Oxford, but also come from the perspective of lived experience as well. I'm the author of a book called The Neurodiversity Edge, and I've worked with a number of companies, top brands, but also scale-ups and universities and colleges. And I'm also the mom of triplets, two of the three, which are neurodivergent. And I'm really excited today to introduce our amazing panelists for this fireside chat. The first panelist we have is Torquil Sane, and he has been a pioneer in neurodiversity employment for many years. He's a social entrepreneur. He's a parent of an autistic son, founder of Special Sterna, also the former chairperson of the Danish government's Council on Corporate Responsibility and SDGs. So really excited to have this conversation. And we also are honored to have Flavia Calafenge, who's Brazilian, and she's also the mother of a 15-year-old autistic girl. She's the director of the Hidden Disabilities Sunflower in Latin America and has done a lot of other amazing things in this space, including being an expert in Global Zero Project for 2025 for the UN in Vienna. So really excited to get started. Welcome to the fireside chat.
Thanks so much, Maureen.
Thank you.
And so I know there was a lot of really interesting conversations that we've been having with all the panelists right throughout this event. And it was really exciting to hear just such a diversity of perspectives, lots of different individuals coming from different angles, different geographies, different perspectives. And I was curious with the both of you, okay, obviously we're here to celebrate the UN Autism World Autism Awareness Day, and April's also Autism Acceptance Month. And I was curious if you could both maybe elaborate a little bit and reflect on how the UN Sustainable Development Goals specifically relate to autism, and why, especially in this particular time, right, in history, why this conversation is really important.
If I may start, Maureen.
Absolutely, go ahead.
I'm super excited to be in this fireside chat with you ladies. I love the UN. It is like the global conscience of the world, and it's a true honor to contribute in any way I can. I was happy to be asked by the UN to help organize the UN World Autism Awareness Day event in 2015, which was my first really experience of going through the corridors in the UN headquarters, and you can feel the history, the legacy, and the humbling experience to be part of something much bigger. And I've been together with Ion. I've also been part in organizing the other events under the observance of the UN World Autism Awareness Day event. It's an event that brings good people together, for sure. Mm-hmm. And this is also what we've seen today with so many who give their perspectives, volunteers from around the world who come together around a cause. And this is what makes the UN and the SDGs very interesting. And autism has a special place. There are no other diagnoses, as to my awareness, that has a special observance day at the UN.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this gives us an opportunity, fantastic opportunity to send our messages to the world. We have the platform, we have the scene, and autistic people have, in my eyes, a huge and important role to play, not just as autistic people, but as representatives of people who face similar barriers, where it may be difficult to see that they may be neurodistinct rather than neurotypical. So I think the autism community, they have a special opportunity to address the world and to be advocates for those who feel like the square peg's not fitting in. And the SDGs is my second favorite subject, because as you mentioned, Maureen, we are living in a world where there's a lot of concerning news all the time. And the concerning news are widely spread, goes viral more than good news. So we have to make sure that more good news get into the scene. And one of the most important good news over the last many, many years, in my eyes, have been that the world had come together. 180 or 90 countries have actually agreed on something, agreed on a global commitment to itself in form of the Sustainable Development Goals. In today's world, it's a fantastic achievement. And this we have to really make the most out of. And my general experience is that if we can create environments where autistic people thrive, we will have reached the ultimate goal of the SDGs, namely leave no one behind. Behind all the SDGs, there are many, there are 17 Sustainable Development Goals. It's all, the glue behind it all is leave no one behind. And we have a lot of experiences, lived experiences as autistic individuals, family members who fight to overcome all the barriers that we meet every day. But I think this autism community is a key to make the SDGs tangible and a showcase of creating environments where no one is left behind.
Yeah, that's really powerful, and it makes me think a lot. There's something I've thought a lot about with, just this issue of how do you get there, right? And something I've been involved in a lot. I've been in some policy roles where I've, at least in my state in Illinois, and in the US, have been helping to shape, policy. There's the top-down perspective, right? How do you make a difference in policy to get there? And then there's the bottom-up perspective. I guess that's how I see it, where it's just the everyday, how do we influence people, shift mindsets? How do we get people to, to maybe understand autism in ways that go beyond what their stereotypical experiences have been in the past. And so I'm really curious, Flavia, what your insights are, given you have a lot of experience, and I'm sure given to your in your part of the world, that things are always contextualized culturally, and things work differently in different parts of the world. So really curious what your thoughts are on about all this.
So, first of all, I'm very excited and anxious and emotional. Today in the morning, I was trying to explain to Felicia, my autistic daughter, what this is all about, because she saw I was preparing the material and studying. And I was trying to explain her what is the United Nations and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And it brought me from where I was a small girl thinking about the United Nations, right? So for me, it's like a dream. After passing through all the difficult situations that I had with her in the past years, being now side by side with Archeo and you in this discussion is really unbelievable. So coming to the point that we are going to discuss the SDGs, and I will be giving my perspective. When you say bottom up, I'm really bottom. I'm really in the bottom. I'm going to give you my perspective and my experience as a mother. And because of this, I turned to be an activist, and now I'm fully dedicated on working in this awareness and this education, trying to make people's autistic families happier and safer and with more peace. For me, no words. I'm really very, very emotional and very thankful for this opportunity. And I hope I can give another perspective from this side of the world.
Wonderful. Great. You know, it's wonderful to have. Yeah, I'm excited to be working with both of you, and it's such an important conversation. And so I guess the other thing I'd want to learn from both of you. So there's been again a lot of incredible insights from all the panelists. It's been a really interesting day in terms of all the different perspectives and research and things that are happening on the ground in different parts of the world. And do you have any thoughts on if you think there's specific regions or countries even that might be leading the way in integrating autism inclusion into their policy frameworks, which are aligned with SDGs? Just curious to see if you think that is the case, and if that is the case, are there things maybe we can learn? Are there approaches that we can learn from that could perhaps apply everywhere? Maybe that is not the case, but just curious to see what your thoughts are if there's countries or regions that you think are doing this particularly well.
If I may start again,
go first.
It's really a mixed picture for me, because there are countries with welfare systems that have been quite mature. I'm from Scandinavia, where we probably have some of the most mature welfare systems. But often it feels like the welfare systems have become machineries without much room for people whose needs are not obvious or may not be as expected by the system. So it's really hard to say, because you cannot just say Scandinavia had a mature welfare system, therefore conditions in Scandinavia will be good for autistic people. That's not necessarily the case. It can very well be so, because all the tools are in the toolbox. But do the person that you interact with understand you? With the mindset of everyone is important, everyone is different, everyone is good at something, and you should not just be judged on the situation that you have ended up in, but on what you could become given the right understanding and support. So I know that in very mature welfare system, there's a lot of friction. So it's not, I cannot point to a country and say their welfare system is doing what we would expect them to do and what the SDGs would expect them to do. I've recently been to Cape Town in South Africa, where the expectations to the welfare system is lower than in Denmark. There's not a long tradition for welfare in South Africa, but and there's a huge inequality. But there's also a history of hope. And this has actually also been formulated by the country as a country for hope. And the legacy of people like Nelson Mandela is just humbling and so much aligned with the emotion I get when I get into the headquarters of the UN, saying, wow, we are together in something that is bigger. We have more in common than what divides us. And there's also a long tradition way before Nelson Mandela came into the place. In the Ubuntu culture, there's a saying, I am because you are. I love that saying. It says,
that's beautiful.
We are here because we are together. If we are all individuals, single, in solitude, then it's not what we should be. So the mindset is there. The system is not there. And sometimes in Scandinavia, it could be the other way. The system is there, but the mindset is not there. So, but the very, I think the most important point is that we ask ourselves what works and where are there examples that work. And this is also, I have a speech on SDG 16, which is about peace and justice and fairness. And one of the targets there is about making sure that the systems work for everyone, that justice is for everyone, that everyone get the support. But we don't know. So this is also an area where I hope that the autism community maybe could catch that ball and say, well, how can we make people aware of what works and what does not work? Maybe ION as a global network organization, grassroots organization, maybe we could find a way to work together also with academia and government, because governments are actually obliged to measure what works, what does not work. But we don't have the statistics, and this is why we have these discussions. But from a general perspective, I cannot tell where it works particularly well, because one thing is what kind of system has been built. Another thing is where does it work, where does it not work. We have to do some more to find out.
Right, and I think to your point too, there's always that cultural context, right, and to be sensitive to how things, the cultural aspect of different parts of the world. So I've also spent some time. I've been fortunate enough to spend some time in South Africa. Actually met Nelson Mandela when I was a student at Oxford, and was very fortunate with that. But yeah, I mean, it just time that I've spent in Africa too. It's for Westerners, it is a very different mentality, right? To realize that just the idea of mental health, like there's such a community perspective. There isn't this, it's not as much of an individual treatment, right, perspective. And so there's a lot we can, I think, learn from each other. and learn from that. And then I think, something you alluded to as well is just the idea that, with neurodiversity in particular, it's different than some physical disabilities, right? Where things are very visible, right? There's invisible strengths, but there's also a lot of invisible challenges. And, the more we can, I guess, have, work towards the cultures where there's a mind shift of just appreciating all people. We all have strengths and challenges. How do we shift to supporting all people and valuing, I guess, all people, and then there's going to be different nuances, right, with different cultures. So yeah, it's really super interesting. And Flavia, what do you think? I mean, I'm sure you've had some pretty interesting experiences in your line of work, and just where the area of the world that you live in and operate in.
Yes, unfortunately here, we in Brazil and in Latin America, we are not in this leading list of countries that are really successful in any of the SDGs and drivers. But after reading a little bit, I realized that Australia is doing very well. They had developed the first national autism strategy. I have heard that the UK had been pioneering in introducing autistic children to mainstream schools. They say that 70% of the autistic children are already in mainstream schools. So this sounds really high and really impressive. But I have some Brazilian friends that are autistic parents that had moved to Portugal, to US, just aiming to find a better life and better social understanding of their families and their children. And I'm afraid to say that even though they find a better environment compared to Brazil, they say that there is still a long way on having the good life with dignity, with respect, and peace that everyone needs to live, right? Everyone deserves. So I think that, as Torkil said, I think that the interesting thing on this cooperation, this collaboration, is we try to study, to be integrated in this research, to try to get best examples and just share them, right?
Wonderful. Yeah, and I know, education's been a focus, a big focus, right? In the SDG 4, quality education obviously calls for inclusive and equitable education. And I was just curious, both of you having a lot of expertise in this space, what do you think in terms of like what would be some of the best practices where we can move in a direction where there's this mind shift that we were talking about, right? Trying to change how we think about autism, how we view autism, seeing it in a more representative way, where there is really this incredibly rich diversity within even our community. But what are your thoughts? Like, what more can we do to make schools and universities more accessible, do you think, for autistic students in particular?
Well, for me,
do you want to go first? Yeah.
Yeah. So I have also experience with special tracks and special schools where autistic kids can attend, and in many cases it's good, but the municipalities I talk with, they say that likelihood for someone who get a job if they've been in special education is very low. So
And would you say that do you think would you say that that's the case pretty much in most of the geographies you've worked in, that there's still these barriers?
Yes.
Regardless of geography,
yeah, and I can tell you why. And it is because the problem is not, in my eyes, so much to get autistic people to get support for education. The problem is more that the other kids never learn how to be different and how to be together in the classroom and in the football club and in the grocery store and so on. So if all autistic kids are taken away from the neighborhood kids when they go to school, it's a problem. And I say problem is not so much the autistic kids.
Right.
It's that those who are not autistic never get the experience. And I'm privileged to be the oldest person here. And I can remember when, from my school time, we didn't know what autism and ADHD and so on was. But we were together, and we didn't have the internet, we didn't have computers and mobile phones, so we were also together in after school. In school, after school, and yes, we teased each others, but I don't think we bullied each others, at least not with a bad intention. We were together because there was no alternative than to be together. And in my class, with the knowledge I have today, probably at least one could qualify for an autism diagnosis. We knew that the kids in the neighboring classes, they could bully him. He would be a target for bullying. So we stood up for him.
Great. So
that was a natural thing to do. How can we get back to the situation where it's natural that we're all different? And
you think we've deteriorated as a society or culture in being, sort of more naturally together and having different neurotypes working together, and so now we have to work harder maybe to make sure we get to a place where we have more representative exposure, would you say? I mean, what do you think? What do you think would be the next step to kind of go in the right direction? Do you think?
Well, I think we should consider how can we give the world a message that autistic kids are not the problem. It is those who never get to understand autistic kids.
Just like the double empathy problem, right? For those of you that is just that it's it's also the world needs to we need to be developing like these shared, going in a direction where there's more shared experiences, so we have shared frameworks, right, to rely on, and it's not autistic people have their way of doing things and neurotypical people have their way of doing things, but we're at least working harder, right, to build these empathy and communication gaps. Would you say that's maybe makes sense in terms of some next steps?
Exactly, and but we already have a direction. It's called neurodiversity. A neurodiverse space is a place where everyone can be different and together. And the world is not enough aware of the importance for the world that we can be different and together. And after 20 years of experience on employment, helping companies being able to benefit from all the fantastic things that can come out of people being more different and more together. We want neurodiversity in the workplaces, but we won't solve the problem until the school system is also neurodiverse.
Right. Yeah, and I know a lot of these conversations start at the workplace and recruitment, but the philosophies that get ingrained in our systems end up starting much earlier. Yeah, Flavia, what do you think here? I know, seem eager to. I'm sure you have a lot of important insights here.
So Felicia went to 3 kindergartens. The first one was closed because they found another baby, 2 years old baby, tied. So we went to the second. The second one, the director called me saying, come here to pick up your baby because she was like 20 and 20 kids, 20 babies. And I went there. She had a head injury. She was bleeding. And the director told me, look, your daughter is like an animal. If you don't give her heavy drugs, she will never come to school. Then I took her to the 3rd kindergarten, and it was a Waldorf kindergarten, with a good reputation. I said, come on now. I found my way and I arrived there after 1 month. And the owner of the kindergarten was crying, saying, come on, today I spanked your Felicia because she was misbehaving. It was my first time in 30 years that I spanked a student. And I was like, come on, you spanked my children. So she's 15 years old. She has been in 14 different schools. We tried everything you can imagine, Maureen. And when we moved back to Chile, because she was born in Chile, then we came to Brazil. We went back to Chile, but we changed a lot. But when we arrived in Brazil, she was 5 years old. We went to a school where she was starting to socialize. So she chose her best friend, and she was very excited. And we were bringing this girl to the movies. Went to the beach together, and she got really obsessed with this girl. And after 1 month, mother came to school saying, please isolate Felicia from my daughter because she's perturbing her. She's harassing her, and we don't Felicia and her sitting together with her and everything. It was heartbreaking because it was her very first friend. Until today, she talks about this girl. So we changed to another school, and in this new big school, she was coming back home saying, get out of here, crazy. Get out of here, crazy. She was repeating what she was listening. And we decided she was aiming to do a pajama party. We still have this culture. I invited the 2 girls that I thought would be the best ones to come.
Yes.
When time came to go to bed, she put her small bed in the middle of both of them. And they said, no, I'm not going to sleep beside her. Neither do I. So party's over. She was crying. It was heartbreaking. It was terrible. Then we went to Chile during pandemic. And there we went from, I would say we went to more than 30 different schools in the high part of the city, at the capital of Santiago. And people were saying to us, and I was bringing her because she's nice, she's happy, she loves to socialize, she's talkative. And they're saying, sorry, we don't accept autistics. So she, for Santa Claus, she asked for a tie as a gift. And I said, a tie? Why do you need a tie? Because in Chile, the uniforms have a tie. She said, I want to go to school. So I put her in a special child school where she was together with children that couldn't talk, couldn't walk. She's so positive that the first day she said, oh, Mom, I'm very happy because they have a microwave. She was very excited. But after 1 month, she told Mom, I'm special, but I'm not that much special. I know how to walk. I know how to read. I can read. I want to go to a classroom. I want books. I want homework. So it was again heartbreaking. And we trying and doing lots of tentatives. Finally, I decided to move to, we live in the middle of a national park in like 6,000 people city. And she goes to the school, is the only school here for her age. And thinking that here we have less competition and thinking that here she could be herself. But unfortunately, as Tarkio said, it's so important to understand how the environment and her peers are important to her. One boy said to her, she had a meltdown the other day in the middle of the classroom, and the boy said, oh, if I knew I would have an autistic child, I would prefer to do an abortion. And
Wow.
and in a very isolated, in the middle of nothing. So we need to understand that the responsibility of the schools are the first social door that the children for their lives, and this is really, really important and really need to be. We need to have right directions and the right informations. I went to Vienna, to the Zero Project in Vienna, and I got in contact with Beacon College in the US. They said they are now focused in neurodivergence, and this hope for me that maybe we will have places where they can feel comfortable and they can be themselves. It's quite difficult to think what is the ideal role, to have her in the middle of this ambient that can be bad for her, with not accepting her condition, or being with lots of people aiming to be understanding and to be respected. We don't have an answer, but it was a hope for me that things are developing.
If I may comment here, Flavia, thanks for sharing your very personal story. I've heard it before, but it touches me every time I hear it. But this is, so no one can have doubt that we are driven to leave no one behind. Absolutely. This is what we think of every day. What will be of our kids when we don't have the resources anymore? And there's a global commitment to sustainable development goals where the aim is also to leave no one behind. So how can we be inspired by South Africa and say, South Africa wants to be the country of hope? How can we be the community of hope? Because we know a thing or two about leaving no one behind. And this is what all governments have agreed upon at the UN. It's not the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. The UN just set the scene. It is the governments and it's the citizens of the nation's sustainable development goals. It's all of us. It's our goals. So how can we come up with a grassroots initiative from the community of hope? Work with the UN, work with the governments, work with academia, because we know what works and what does not work. Just imagine how many resources you have spent, Flavia, trying to get what all the countries have agreed upon, that of course your daughter should have the same opportunities as everyone else. If we could help the governments with the knowledge that we are getting every day from the tension fighting with the systems, how can we turn this tension into something that is helpful for us and for the governments, and can help the governments with their obligations to live up to the Sustainable Development Goals? Because they promise to do so, but are they on the right track? Yes. But who will be the best partner for them to find out, are we on the right track or not? What works, what does not work? How can we work together in a new constellations? For example, I'm a granddad now, 3.5 grandchildren, the fourth coming up in a couple of months. I'm trying to think like a grandfather also. At my age, there are many people who are getting close to retire. They are on top of their network and credibility as business persons, and they have more time than the busy young families. Two examples here in the Fireside chat. How can maybe my generation be a new partner of a grassroots movement of hope? Because there's nothing we would rather do than to see our grandchildren thrive also with kids who are different than themselves.
Right, and I think
we need to say, yes, there's a lot of struggles in the world, and we're all struggling. But the SDGs is a statement of hope under the umbrella of the UN. And we could be the community of hope that could, from a grassroots angle, partner with new constellations of partners to do something that can turn much of the tension into something that is of knowledge and use for the systems and those representing the systems.
And I was going to bring up, we talk often about the SDGs, sometimes in very separately, right? There's SDG 4, quality education. There's SDG 8, decent work and economic growth, and 10, reducing inequalities. But I think there's a lot of value too in thinking about this in terms of with neurodiversity in particular. Like there's specific goals and progress we would all like to see in the world, and there's more overlap, right? I think in some of these SDGs than maybe has been discussed in the past, and I'm curious. We talked about the SDG 4 with the quality education, but it seems like as we mentioned early in the conversation, like even with just the barriers to achieving meaningful work, right? For many autistic people, a lot of those barriers, they don't necessarily start right at the recruitment phase, or they start earlier in education, but they're, the SDG 8, decent work and economic growth, right? The importance of being inclusive employment, like what more can we do to increase, fair and meaningful job opportunities for autistic individuals. So I was curious what you both thought about that, but also just wanted to bring up, I guess, the way I've been thinking about it is that the direction the world's going in too is that that's not necessarily a separate question from some of the conversations we've been having and what more we need to do on the educational side.
If I may jump in again, because this is my ball game here. So the SDGs, they are bundled around people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnerships.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something for people, there's something for the planet, and all the initiatives we are talking about, education, employment, and that they are parts of the puzzle.
Right.
But SDG 16 is really where you measure where are we heading. All the things we are doing in SDG 4 and 8 and so on, how can we make sure that it works? And what works, how can we make sure that that will be made available to other parts of the world and stakeholders? And so this is where the government needs someone, a global grassroots organization, a grassroots organization who knows the pains, know when things work and not. Number 17 is about partnership for change. This is where we can scale what works. First, we need to find out what works. And then another favorite SDG of mine is partnership for the goals, number 17. This is where we can go across stakeholders in the community. This is where companies, foundations, governments, social entrepreneurs, civil society organizations, academia can come together voluntarily and say, we commit to this. But no goal can be dealt with separately, because as you mentioned, Maureen, they all interact. So if you have a good education, then it will benefit employment and there'll be less poor people, health will be better, and so on. So it's all intervened. But the glue is and will forever be the leave no one behind. And we know a thing about that. So I think we have an opportunity to play an important role to help the governments, companies, all stakeholders realize the goals that they have committed to a long time ago. But as it looks now, there's not many years left to 2030, and more funds are being spent on military. So we really need to think differently, and we need to offer our insight in what works, what does not work.
Yeah, it's very really insightful. And Flavia, what do you think?
Talking about work for autistic, because you said the way they are integrated, but as Thorkill said, it's a big
so obviously there's a lot of work that needs to be done just for how do we make work more accessible, right, for autism. And it was just the issue that that some of these SDGs they work together, and that some of these conversations obviously with education need to be happening earlier, ideally, right? If we're trying to really change things from a systems perspective. But yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts from your experiences with even just the employment aspect of this? How do we make work more meaningful, more accessible to more autistic people?
So here in Brazil, what I have seen is that we have quota systems. We have a law that companies need to follow.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, they are focused on hiring people with evident disabilities. They are pretty much afraid about neurodiversity. They just don't know how to handle. They just don't know
Mhm.
how to accommodate their workplaces. So the ESG agendas, they have a very clear agenda for gender, for race,
Mhm.
for ethnic,
Mhm.
but for, for disabled, it's still very incipient, I would say. And for autistics, we have the statistics is they are very sad. They say that 85% of the autistic adult population is out of the workplace here. And I would say that the other 15% are underemployed. So in Chile, they also have these quota systems, but they prefer sometimes to pay the penalties than to hire a person with a disability. And I also heard that this is really sad that a specific company there contract the autistic and say, please, here's your salary, but don't come. Don't come to the office. You have your salary granted, but don't come to the office. So it's awful, right? I As the director of Sunflower Hidden Disabilities, my work has been on changing this in the region, introducing the lanyard, the Sunflower lanyard, and doing the training to these companies to show what is a hidden disability, and to understand that sometimes the person is there masking, pretending that
Mhm.
they is okay, but they are suffering.
Right.
And it has been impressive that people are coming after me and sending me messages saying thank you very much, because
Mhm.
I was suffering every day to come to work. So the other day I was doing a training session in Justice Tribunal here in Brazil, and my sponsor there said, please talk to people that don't know they don't have the diagnostic yet. Please try to give them, oh, maybe I'm autistic. Say if you are suffering, if you feel isolated, if you have lunch by yourself, if you are very honest and you are not having good relationships at work. So we know that lots of people are suffering in their workspace also when they have, I am ADHD myself. So
Mhm.
know that there's lots of things to develop in here in the region. I have heard lots of good news in UN Vienna and Zero Project about companies that are changing the way they have their
Mhm.
job description, for example, because job description, excellent communication skills
Mhm. Mhm.
uh, is already out, then excellent communication skills could not be a must-have in all job
Mhm.
offers. Right? Then they were changing their hiring processes. Instead of having the common interview, they were bringing these marshmallows and spaghettis for people to build
Mhm.
castles, to see the teamwork, to see creativity. They were using Minecraft. And I have heard lots of good news about this and about the worries, as Torquil said, on leaving no one behind.
Mhm.
So I think we are in our way, and it's good that people are already conscious about it, and some companies are already taking this attitude, right?
That's wonderful. Yeah, and it sounds like and if we had to wrap up all the other sessions, and there's so many rich conversations and insights that have been made throughout the event. It sounds like, as Torkel mentioned, like it's such a big focus ends up being on how do we build these stronger strategic partnerships? How do we collaborate? How do we work together? Which very much fits in with the SDG, set 17. And I guess along with that, one of the things we haven't talked as much about is maybe what more we can do, like even globally, in collaborating with knowledge sharing, right? Helping bridge these gaps with research and implementation, and how do we, do more in, the policy implementation, and then of course there's the geographic, there's different countries and different cultural scenarios we're all operating in it. But I mean, I don't know if it briefly, maybe you could each just briefly comment on, if there's one or two directions you would suggest that where we can make some progress there of bridging this sort of like knowledge sharing gap where we can learn more from evidence-based practices and, push things further into real world change, right, and implementation, and including policy.
Yeah, thank you. I think there's a lot of good initiatives, but they are, how can we bring them into the daily life of people all over the world? For example, employers. The organization I founded 21 years ago, Specialisten, has been working with 500 companies or so, and to help them employ and manage autistic people. They get it. But they've only seen a small piece of the value that they can get out of being a neurodiverse employer. What I'm trying to do now is to make companies aware that if they want to represent the community they are working in their organization, then expect that 1 out of 5 will probably need a neurodiverse environment to thrive. A place where the beliefs are that everyone are important, everyone are different, everyone is good at something, and it's not maybe documented in the resume or CV, but doesn't matter. Let's find out what you're good at and how you can go from being good at something to be great at something. What kind of respect, accommodation, clarity, availability is needed for you to thrive, not as an individual, yes, but also as a team member. This is what we've seen, that places where inclusion of autistic people have been successful, everyone thrive. It's a benefit, and this is also why so many companies have entered into employment programs. And we should not talk anymore about, does it make business sense to employ autistic people? The answer is yes. And you don't need to discuss that anymore. The evidence is 500 plus companies do it, and they don't do it if it does not give business sense. What we also need to make sure is that all the capabilities of employees can be made available to do as good as work as they can. And that will also require neurodiverse environments where you don't need to fear to be singled out as not fitting in, masking, as you mentioned, Flavia. And I think this is fantastic what you're doing with Sunflower. I love the concept. It's also potential constellation of different partners from different UN goals that are all driving towards the leaving no one behind. A very message of hope from working with many employers. Yes, they can be difficult at times to work with those employers. Their attention span are not so wide, but we have succeeded in jobs from pig farming to cybersecurity, from back office to front office, host of guests at museums. And what I've seen is that normally these companies, they are fierce competitors, but when it comes to sharing experience in employment programs for autistic and neurodistinct people, they are open to share because they know that the more talent will be made available for the labor market, the better it will be for them. So it's not a zero-sum game anymore. And we need to piggyback on that and say to the companies, work with us to work with the education system to make autistic kids or neurodistinct kids be the cool kids in the class, thrive, and tell all students that it will be important when they want to do a career in a modern, innovative labor market, that they're used to making the most out of the differences that we all have together. So we have to send a message of hope. And I'm catch many signals of hope from employers. But there's of course also it's a contact sport. So sometimes it goes very well, sometimes it pushes you push back. But there are so many people, including CEOs, top managers, middle managers, co-workers, who care deeply about neurodistinct people, family members, neighbors, friends. Maybe they have kids, maybe they are neurodistinct. And so it's a universal thing, and the companies who are best at understanding that and create these spaces for neurodiversity will be the most sustainable ones. They'll be here in 100 years from now. So I think we have messages that we need to get out to the world saying, stop thinking about autistic people as a minority.
Right.
Think together with all the other diagnoses under the neurodistinct umbrella, each person has two parents, maybe siblings, uncles, nephews, grandparents who want something new. So there's a new hope to make us talk about. There's a new majority on the way saying, we want a change. You should stop thinking of autistic people and neurodistinct people as a minority, because they are all loved by someone. It's
That's it.
To say that now there's a majority who want to change.
Right. That's a really, it's a really incredibly important point. If Flavia, I know you've been. You have something to comment here.
Yes, I want to comment what he said. First, thank you very much for talking about the sunflower and why I am here. I was introduced to sunflower in a flight, Latin Airlines flight, when I said she was autistic, because we were always suffering a lot of prejudice because she was running, she was shouting. And this trip was completely different from the others because people were seeing that she was putting, I have a hidden disability, so they're laughing at her, asking her name. Where are you traveling? She didn't want to take the lanyard the first week, not even to sleep. She was very excited with her lanyard. Then I decided to get in contact with them in London And I was surprised when I realized that they are in 300 airports, 20 airlines, in retail, in hospitals. So I offered myself to be the regional. Because I said, if I knew this before, I wouldn't be passing through all these difficult situations on people saying, oh, if it's autistic, we shouldn't come to the club, to the movies, to the beach. We were also always fighting in the middle of the street with people with prejudice, with lack of empathy. So I offered myself, and Torquil said that he was excited because I showed him that we now have a Brazilian law. It's a federal law that recognizes the lanyard as the official instrument for people who wants to voluntarily disclose that they have a disability. In the day of the launch of the law, we projected the Christ, the Redeemer, with the sunflower. We have been in the stadiums in Maracanã, in Morumbi. Paulo Football Club is partnering with us. The big retailer, Multiplan, the biggest shopping malls, everyone is recognizing the lanyard. So we are taking the autistic population and the hidden disability population out of isolation. And this has been really forming here. In Chile, there is now a project of law. In Uruguay, there is a project of law to recognize the sunflower. So thank you, Torquil, to bringing this to the conversation, because it has been really, for me, I've been receiving messages daily about schools that the girl was having a heart attack and someone saw it was with a sunflower lanyard and saved her life, and thousands of messages and examples. But I would like to talk a little bit when you mention about the global cooperation and the global perspective. I want to give a little bit more information about health in Brazil. We didn't touch health, but here you must have a medical insurance to be assisted.
Right.
And you cannot go to a public hospital. So I was lying. I was omitting that Felicia was autistic because I was rejected from all the insurance companies. And the funny thing is that in the questionnaire, they said, do you have another disease that is not included here? And I saved my life because as for me, autism is not a disease. It was not a lie, but I omitted that she's autistic. But at the end, she would never be assisted if I said she was autistic. And what is happening now is that families are judicializing their treatments. And the biggest insurance problem are the lawsuits against the insurance companies because of unassisted autism. And the good news is that we have very beautiful and very well elaborated laws, but with no supervision, with no control. Then the laws are just there, but they are not followed. So 9 in 10 processes are win for families. Then this is good news. But we have lots of different crazy offers of ABBA, of all therapies that you can imagine, people that are influencers, there are YouTubers offering therapy, and there is a big market, a big economic market in Brazil on this, with no control, with no supervision, and nowadays the costs of autism therapies for these insurance companies are higher than cancer treatments. So the number one cost for our countries. And sadly, when Torquil said, the children, they have 2 parents, I'm afraid to tell you that 78% of the fathers abandon the family when they get the diagnostic here. So these mothers, they have been working by themselves to survive, to create their children. The other day, was passing here in the neighborhood, and I was hearing someone shouting, and a neighbor told me, no, he's crazy. And after I turned to know that it was an autistic, that he stays all day closed by himself, alone, home alone, and the mother goes to work, and he has no expectation. He's just there waiting to die. And talking about dying, suicide is very common here. That you know that autistic, they have 66% depression and high rates of suicides, but here it's very, very common that the mothers, they kill their child and they kill themselves. They suicide afterwards. We have very, very high rates of suicide here. So it's just a completely different world for you, but I want you to imagine how far away we are from a good reality for the autistic family.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah, if I may shortly comment it's thanks for sharing, and we actually see something similar in Denmark, at least on the suicide or considering suicide. We normally praise ourselves as one of the most happy countries, and I say to as many as I can, how about the mental health statistics? How do you think it's going here in Denmark? It's not good. Mental health statistics are just going through the roof. I think Denmark is a country with very high suicide rate or suicide. So again, Flavia, it's the same that we face, just in different settings. And I'm very aware about the challenge that so many fathers leave the spouse in situations like this. It's really sad, and it's also an ambition of mine. How can we make fathers play more with their kids? Because if there's one key thing that could change the lives for so many families around the world, it's if we could make fathers and kids more comfortable with each other. It's not fair for the mothers to be left with all the challenges, but no father wants to go away from the family. It's because they don't seem to be able to handle it. So what can we do? And there's so much to be done, but we are a global tribe of people in similar situations, regardless of where we are in this world, and we need to find ways to do things together. But how can we pinpoint where we can make the biggest change with the smallest effort? And one of those I would say is find a way to make fathers play more with their kids.
That's great, and it seems like one of the other themes that's been emerging here is just, especially in the kind of unpredictable world we have, and is just the importance of finding your tribe, right? Having a place where you feel like you belong, whoever you are, right? And it seems like it's just, a lot of the research and statistics also look that especially autistic girls are particularly vulnerable with mental health and suicide. Yes, and so there's we need to take this seriously, right? And just it's so important, even just us as a community, right? That whether we have lived experience or we're allies, that we come together and we have the same values, and we find we create these environments and these opportunities for people to feel like they belong. I think that, there's, and then Torkel, what you mentioned with, fathers being more, like, there's so many different layers to this, it seems like. But I think the first step is just having conversations like this, right? Where we're brainstorming, we're coming together as a global community, trying to figure out, well, what more can we do, and what, I think regardless of our role or our title, we each could probably play a role, even if it's as simple as just, showing more empathy, right? And being kinder, or, I mean, there's just lots of different things, lots of different layers here to unpack. And I know we have limited time. And I guess one of the, I guess we're starting to run out of time here, in terms of, if there was a last question, and then feel free for both of you to add any details, or bring up issues we haven't discussed. But there's been so again, there's so many layers to this, but especially when we're thinking about, we can't completely ignore that we're in this very unusual time, right, in history, where so many things are changing very fast, and that will ultimately also change the employment landscape. And so there's a lot more uncertainty, I guess, than there has been historically. And I'm just, when you think about that context, I'm curious, if you had to decide on one major policy change that you could implement globally that would benefit autistic people, and create more alignment with the SDGs for authentic inclusion. I know this is a tough question, but if you had to choose one major policy change, what would it be?
I'll probably not answer the question fairly, but I'd like to comment on what you just mentioned.
Okay.
So at times there will be different signals from governments, but there's one universal understanding among all employers, and that is they want access to the most talent and most variation in talent, because they run a business that needs to be sustainable. And regardless of political messages and governmental decisions, this is a universal thing. There's a global need to make people realize their talent. So we should not be sidetracked about from pushback and headwinds and so on, because we are onto something that is more important than that changing policies. We are working for a global commitment, and this is why I love the UN, and I love discussions like this with members of what I see as my global tribe. It's very, 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 very big global tribe, but not many are aware of the size and the potential power in it.
Right.
So how can we make a global grassroots movement that has not been seen before? We are under the umbrella of the UN here. The SDGs are the topics for this discussion. We have alignment from the top level, from the SDGs. They have committed, all governments, all companies, all communities have committed to leave no one behind.
Right.
Then there's a lot of moving parts of the ways. But under that, there's a grassroots, there's a tribe, and that is us. So what can we do? We know at top level, we have backing, that all the company, everyone have decided on leaving no one behind. And we feel it every day. We know what works, what does not work. How can we make a patchwork of partners in the operational phase so we can help the world with what the world has decided they want?
That's great, and yeah, and obviously this goes beyond like obviously the political considerations and environments where you know we're you know, the world we live in now. It seems increasingly there may be just a lot of the innovation and leadership may be coming from private sector, whether that's, you know, corporations, whether that's from hopefully governments too. We all partner together, right, with nonprofits, governments, corporate sector, but beyond the sort of you know, more political considerations, it seems like just the direction things are going in with this being really the first time in history where so much cognitive work is going to be taken over much more swiftly than we've maybe seen, you know, in the past. So it's just like a lot of disruption than we've used to seeing. But even it seems like, to me anyway, I have a lot of hope that when things are disruptive like that, maybe people do come together more and are more open-minded, and there's an opportunity, right, where we can make faster change, right, and hopefully make the world and the corporate world and the governments and, you know, where we all partner and see particularly neurodiversity in a new light, and why it's maybe increasingly even much more valuable, you know, to business. At least that's my view. And Flavio, from your perspective and your experiences, I don't know, what would you agree with that, or do you disagree with that? What do you, or have you know, some other insights?
I always agree with Archio, of course. He's an authority here for me. But if I needed to choose one policy, I'm really aiming to have a global health direction,
right?
Because since I lived two realities in Brazil and in Chile. In Brazil, the diagnostic was given in a private, very expensive doctor that gave when she was 2 years old. In Chile, they wouldn't give a diagnostic before 6. So it would be too late for her to have intervention and treatments. And as I mentioned, I tried everything. She was nonverbal, and she started to talk because of music therapy. She did horse therapy. We did everything there, but we need to have a guidance through ages, to know in the development of the child. I'm going to give another example. She had her first period, and I took her to the doctor because we have the statistics here say that 1 in 3 are abused. That's why when you said girls, 1 in 3 disabled people are abused. So I took her, they put her this anti-conceptive implant, and she was saying, "Oh, Mom, I'm now like our dog, like Maggie. I'm not going to get lost. I have a sheep." She thought it was the sheep. And even though she's in 8th grade and she has been passing through the school, and I thought she knew about reproduction because we talked about reproduction, I couldn't understand her knowledge in what we were talking about. What was that? Because she thought it was a chip, and she wouldn't. So, and she's coming to adult life. I'm worried about her future. I also saw in Vienna new universities in Spain that have new assisted homes for people with disabilities, where they keep their autonomy and their independence, and they just receive mentorship for these groups in the university. And I love this because, of course, as all other mothers, I don't want to kill my daughter, and I don't want to suicide. I want a future to her. And then if I need to choose, this would be the number one policy they have, to see what's going to happen when she's alone, right?
Right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. Both of you have just been amazing, and I feel so honored to moderate this conversation. It's been a lot of insights, and valuable contributions. So if there's I don't know if there's anything else you'd want to add, but I think we covered a lot of material here. And so just wanted to thank both of you for participating.
Thank you, Maureen. You did fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.